Barrister Harmony studied law at the University of Calabar in Nigeria, University of Yaoundé in Cameroon, and University of Nottingham in United Kingdom, where he successfully earned his LLB, MA, and LLM in law. Between 1985 and 86, he trained for the bar in Nigeria and got called to the Nigerian Bar Association in December 1986. He returned to Cameroon in 1987, where he began as a junior attorney before becoming a full-fledged advocate at law of the Cameroon Bar Association in December 1990. He shuttled between Cameroon and Nigeria to practice law up till 2010. This puts him total of 34 years cumulative post-call standing in Cameroon Bar and Nigeria Bar Associations, where he has professional experience litigating before common law and civil law, both domestic and international, such as the Court of Justice of the Central Africa Economic Community and the African Commission for Human Rights. He also taught as an adjunct in 2 Cameroon universities, as well as ran human rights projects under an NGO known as Human Rights Clinic, before leaving Cameroon for the United States, before fleeing Cameroon for the United States. It's good to make sure we distinguish between those of us who are economic migrants and those people who are political refugees. In January 2017. Barrister Harmony has been a partner of the Abalu, Bobga and Co law firm and head of the firm in Cameroon since 1986 in both Nigeria and Cameroon. His partner happens to be the majority ruler in the person of Ugera Francis Abelo Ersk, now of blessed memory. Barrister Bobga and Ugera have impacted their profession in many ways, socio-political communities, living together a generation of both Sobans and Nigerians and Cameroonians, to be exemplified by their professional life and their ability to exemplify by their professional life and their private and charitable activities. Barrister Bobga fled Cameroon in 2017 after he was tipped of a planned state assassination on account of his leadership of the common law lawyers minority group against, that was protesting against the French-inspired civil law of Cameroon. He now resides in the United States, where he is seeking asylum. So please, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to once more bid a very hearty welcome to one of the greatest legal scholars and minds of our time. Welcome to the Town Hall, Barrister Harmony Bobga.
With all humility, I want to thank everybody. The Amazonian struggle is a lifelong engagement for all of us, even some who are not conscious that they are engaged in such a struggle. And I want to thank especially the Town Hall that has pushed me for the second time to get out of my cocoon to participate in the everlasting discourse of giving the world an example of a people imbued with democratic reflexes from their God. I had the invitation from the Town Hall that I should bring forth my own contribution to the ongoing discussion regarding referendum as a pathway for exiting the quagmire in which we find ourselves. Before I get into the PowerPoint that I have submitted to the town hall, which will permit you to follow the discussion in point form, I want to say that God has really blessed us with opportunities, knowledge, and skills that we have been more than prepared than any other African country for all the decades to be an independent nation. I take just the example of this referendum discussion. On the 20th of December, 2018, I was invited to participate in a similar discussion as we're having now. And when I arrived at the US Congress, because I thought it was something organized by Congress, I noticed it was organized by some of our own people who are also very concerned. And, you know, I had a partner with whom we had worked, Dr. Niba Fontem, as well as a younger sister, daughter, who is very active on the ground, Kawala. We all took different positions. And, you know, I remained consistent. And this is not a bluff. It is that I took my stand that I will defend the question of restoration of independence of Southern Cameroon at any time T. And we were reflecting on the referendum question, and I made my proposition. This document, there was a seminar pre-discussion brief that I presented, which I will submit to Town Hall for exploitation by any interested party. If you can move to the second slide, because I've captioned my presentation today on the search for an exit from the entrapment in the Amazonian predicament. And of course, I'm not operating as an individual because I am so scared about projecting myself. I rely on, you know, community effort, the community of our efforts. And that is why I'm speaking as a representative of the Southern Cameroons Bar Foundation, as well as the Justice for Indigenous Peoples of Southern Cameroon, both organizations that I head in the United States here. So, the Secretariat, can you move to the second slide, please? I'd like to discuss now the, by way of introduction and backdrop to this topic, how we can use referendum as a pathway for exiting the entrapment in which the Southern Cameroon's restorative revolution is trapped. It is known to everybody that we are about 7 years into a war unleashed on us, which, you know, when you assess it, it puts us in a position where we have never, we are not, and it seems we are not likely to see the light at the end of the war tunnel. Now, what is motivating this new reflection, which involves a drift from the war? This, of course, is the background to the rationale of the option we are taking on now. And that's why more than every other theme, the referendum theme, from my observation, has attracted, in terms of numbers of Ambazonian and the quality of Ambazonian, vertically and horizontally, the greatest that I have ever seen, showing interest in the discussion around that topic. We must recognize the fact that the Ambazonian struggle, because it took us off guard. Ambazonians have never intended war. They have never planned war. We went out with peace plans, and war was brought onto us like acid rain in the middle of the day. And obviously this generated some confusion amongst us because we never had time to organize ourselves. And of course, sometimes when I say it, some people are ruffled, they're not too comfortable. But I always focus on the establishment of the neighboring French Cameroon Republic. Well, there are missteps or belief in the fact that pounding on us would make a difference, which sparked the human instinct in us to get into self-defense, which is something that is recognized by the UN Human Rights Instrument. You don't get into a man's house and start beating him and he takes his gun and gives you to kill him. He will fight back, even with a broomstick, like the Bakosi people would do. But when we pause and have a reflection on this war, we realize a couple of things which are critical to mark. There has been a visible unproductivity on both sides of the conflict. And here I'm very concerned about our own sides. There has been demonstrated a poverty of knowledge and skills for conflict management and transformation. Because human nature is essentially conflictual. But the security of humanity relies more on how we manage the conflict. One of the things that has killed us is a lack of organization. There's also been a lot of misconstruction and misunderstanding of the import of leadership, which has compounded, a spiral of adventurism amongst our people, who took off initially with very genuine interest and purpose. I will skip that because you can access these other points, which I will still come back to in the body of the presentation to elaborate on, and move to the next slide that has been put up by the Secretariat. Now, the question of why are we engaging in a conversation on referendum is very critical. And I had these few points to make, and permit me to take this, because this is the foundation of the argument that I have in favor of referendum, the rationale. This is what I opine, that war remains the most stupid of human endeavors, with the person or people who sparked it being located in the class of the very last grade of fools. We all know about the damage to property, the damage to human life, damage of the past, damage of the present, and damage of the future. What else can be more foolish? Now, getting into the effect of engaging in such foolishness, war drains the flesh and the mind of energy and invites the wise to jolt the mind of society to begin a walk away from war when the cycle of war begins to end like a slowly deflating balloon. I clap for all Ambazonians because the number of Ambazonians who have engaged in this discourse of the referendum is indicative of the fact that we have come to realization of the unworthiness, the unproductiveness of war, and that referendum as a mechanism is worth contemplating. It is worth adopting, engaging in order to break with a haunting past, the war. The retreat of the thoughts of viability of war is usually matched by a direct opposite evolvement of a need and an urgency for a non-violent replacement of war in the form of peace and justice. This is the point at which we are. This is the watershed of the history of our survival and relevance in common humanity. We have had our sour taste of war, but as the spirit of war retreats with its opium, depriving our physical and mental muscles of its false energy, the more latent and constructive energy flows in activating our minds with cleansing spirits of peace and justice, lifting us from the doldrums of violent idiocracy into the purity of the purer spiritual realm, where we connect and commune with our compassionate and forgiving Lord and Maker. Excuse my Christian fallback, but I want to assure you, as a member of the Voma Society of Balenyonga, I do not neglect African spirituality. And these same principles that I espouse here as a Christian are the ones that also mark the African spirituality that I know. No doubt, whether with African spirituality or with Western type Christianity, there are always abuses, but our focus is on the good thing in this belief system. Moving forward, still with this rationale, there's no doubt that we have individually and within groupings of our wholesome Ambazonian community been wrestling ourselves from the path of violence, destruction, and drift away from the leading light in the last couple of years, journeying from Swiss talks through offers by European Peace Initiative, and most recently, the attempted Canadian facilitation towards unconditional dialogue to end war. Most recently, just like Ambazonia rose up like one person upon the call of our common law lawyers for a revisit of the foundation of a suspect union without treaty, referendum has acquired a noticeable centrifugal potency that it is being discussed across the board. What I make of the foregoing development is that it is positive, it is a positive vibration that has come to spark our reasoning and pull us back to one agenda, and therefore worth embracing after carefully educating ourselves of how it can be used to serve our purposes. focus a bit on the synergy that comes out of the frustration we have experienced. The urgency it produces for us to look up to referendum as a panacea. This is something I often say because I've been molded in adversity. And I always say this, rot is not always negative. Much as that is the first characterization it is most likely to receive from its perceivers. A fall in course of a race, in similar terms, may appear as a setback, but once it is exploited in a synergic manner as a learning opportunity, it becomes an asset. This is where I invite all Ambazonians to adopt a more reconciliatory approach to one another. Acknowledge that man is imperfect. We make our mistakes. So let's give ourselves the opportunity of correcting ourselves. And it is only those who would deny themselves that opportunity that can now be classified as really people who do not love the community. We have examples in many other places. I always cite South Africa. Yes, all the quarreling that goes on, that are like leaks in our engine, threatening to knock the engine of the revolution, should be put in the parking lot and dealt with in the future Truth and Reconciliation Commission that we shall put in place, hopefully, in order to reconstruct our society on the basis of justice and peace. The points raised in the preceding slide, which I was dealing with the rationale, may appear as a self-indictment over a failed project, yes, but it could be turned around into a call for a pause with intent to self-evaluate performance and tools employed. This is how frustration can be managed as it mutates with a germ of hope to arise once more with either renewal of old tools on engagement with completely, or engagement with completely new tools. Time and timing in such circumstances are hardly enough for full advantage to be taken of the opportunity, thus making the moment one of urgency. The question that arises over the new tool or approach of referendum is whether or not it is a viable panacea to adopt, or it is worthless, given the experiences we had in the plebiscite of 1961 and the infamous 1972 referendum for the break with the discourse cum experiment on a two-state constitutional Cameroon Republic in order to birth a United Republic of Cameroon. I just hope oh my God. I hope I'm not running out of charge. Just 1 second. Bear with me, gentlemen. I suspect I'm running out of power, which is terrible. Okay. Yeah, I'll get my sister's phone, so that we can continue with her phone. But while she's keying in, let me continue. Usually, as a teacher, I always say, don't solve a problem, don't look for a solution to a problem that you have not understood. And what I feel is that the Amazonian revolution is not, the Amazonian revolution is not properly understood by most of us. So I feel very strongly that we need a restatement of the Amazonian problem or predicament. From deep historical times, following the end of the World War I, to as recent as 2018, the idea of referendum as either a stand alone or part of a combo of tools considered as useful for charting a pathway to an exit from the quagmire-like genocidal war in Amazonia has slowly yet assuredly meandered its way into center stage of the Amazonian discourse in the last couple of months. It is quite possible that the development in the result of the discomfort is the result of the discomfort with the bad investment in violence. Tell me any family in Amazonia that has not lost a loved one. Evidently, winning or not, war remains a bad investment. And especially within the context of rapid changes and consequent realizations provoked by the emerging geopolitical landscape in the world, as accentuated by the Russia-Ukraine war, where I argue that the international community, as much as Cameroon itself, owes a greater responsibility to Amazonia than to Ukraine. But here we are the neglected conflict for life. So it falls back on us to make ourselves relevant on world stage. And we are not going to make ourselves relevant by playing the ostrich that the international community is not to be taken into account. They share the referendum option that we are embracing. We are not going to lose our posture as a people fighting for the security of their identity and independent nationhood. But then, by employing tools of diplomacy, we would be able to win voices to our side. With this, let me attempt, and I do leave it open because I do not claim to know it all, but this has been my consistent view. Were there to be referendum, the question we shall put would be responsive to what kind of problem? This is what I call here the statement of problem. And my opinion is this: the Ambazonian problem or predicament is concerned with the subject, principles, procedures, and appropriate tools for the assertion of the right to be free to define who the Ambazonians are and how they may take on and manage their destiny as a community of peoples by themselves in accordance with tested historical facts and groundings in law. The sub-issue here would read thus: whether or not referendum is a viable tool or pathway to securing and sustaining a solution to the primary problem in the preceding statement. Now, this brings us now to analyze the referendum concept as a conflict transformation tool or mechanism or system. And I do this by asking a couple of questions that I attempt to answer, leaving room in our discussion for you to contribute to the answers and also to ask me questions of further clarification. The first that I try to tackle is, how would referendum apply to the Ambazonian predicament or problem? The preceding slides, which bear the import of the concept of referendum. Oh no, I beg your pardon, I skipped one. Now, the first question is, what does the concept of referendum mean? I have 3 points here. Referendum is a voting device or mechanism by which the will of the people over an issue distinct from selecting persons for offices and roles in governance or management of a community of peoples is carried out. Secondly, it could be described as a test of what a people wish for themselves, the test of a desire or an idea. While it could arise from a constitutional foundation as an established means for testing the acceptability of a policy of a government, of an established entity, as a tool sought to be employed for resolving conflict in the context that, like that of Ambazonia, it focuses on a theme, an idea designed to secure peace, generating a cocktail of legality and legitimacy as a solution to the problem at hand. Thirdly, the discernible key. The last point I was making, where I found myself talking to myself, was that the discernible key characteristic of referendum is its element of being a test of popularity of an idea or policy or approach amongst two or more alternatives with which to resolve a critical crisis. And critical crisis for more than 60 years has been the character of the Ambazonian predicament. The next point is, how would referendum apply to the Ambazonian predicament or problem? This is tricky because of the complexity of the composition of stakeholders in the Amazonian problem. And my views are that with what we have just had as the import of the concept of referendum, it naturally raises the question of modalities, given that the enforceability of its outcome demands a consensus of sort amongst the stakeholders to the conflict, that the mechanism is designed to trigger for a transformation through discourse before, during, and thereafter in our move away from violent conflict to peace and justice. My reflection on the above lead me to seeing the referendum mechanism as lying horizontally in a spectrum informed by different shades and stages that will be responsive to the particular needs of different stakeholders and ultimately culminating in a beneficial, wholesome outcome for all the stakeholders. They say all fingers are not the same, but to hold a post firm, you still need all those fingers. The primacy of place, especially as a continuing victim of international errors, underlying the Amazonian rights to a historical juridical identity and self-determination, leaves indisputably the bigger claim to Amazonians, while providing the other stakeholders an opportunity to come clean from past, present, and imminent continuation of iniquities against Amazonia. It is by the above lenses that the referendum, I think, would apply as a solution to the problem we are dealing with. Next is our question on what question ought to be put in a referendum designed to respond to the urgent needs regarding the Amazonian conflict. Straight away, I would tell you, the peoples of the United Nations British Trust Territory, now renamed Amazonia, and I prefer and insist on using Amazonia because it is an act of claim and entrenchment of our identity, have experienced the dangers of improper construction of the question for popular vote in the 1959, you excuse my date, I have to check it, what is 61 plebiscite on two alternatives. We were not consulted. Two alternatives were given to us like bitter pills to swallow as a means of accession to independence at the end of colonial tutelage. This time around, all stakeholders ought to be wiser and ensure that the question for referendum must be crafted to respond to the roots of the conflict that the near absolute majority of the stakeholders seek an end to. It is my humble opinion that to be an effective solution that will be sustainable, the referendum requires a question that must necessarily be born out of the Amazonians' rights to self-determination and covering the right to define who they are factually and in accordance with international law, as well as how they want to be seen and to relate with other members of the international community. Cognizant of what I have just said by way of proposition of seeing clearer in order to formulate an opposite question for the referendum exercise in Ambazonia, this is the way I would couch it. Whether or not the Ambazonians would like to secure their bundle of rights to self-determination as an independent state, or by affiliating with French Republic of Cameroon. I say this because French Republic of Cameroon is a principal party to this conflict. They sparked it by clamping down on us, and the question must pull them in so that our answer will turn them away from violence and situate them properly in a negotiation table of two parties to a conflict primarily, which would be Ambazonia and the Republic of Cameroon. My next point is, who should be eligible to vote in the referendum? I've had to deal with this question for the last 30 years. In fact, when I contributed to the discussions surrounding the SCAPO proposed constitution for Ambazonia, these same questions came in the form of determination of who can be an Ambazonian citizen. We are not going to go into the details of this, but let me just say, one key distinction between the interests of the stakeholders is that Ambazonians as victim complainants are the fundamentally the direct bearers of the burden of the wrong, in quotes, that underlies the conflict across decades, starting from the end of World War I. It is the rights and freedoms of Ambazonians that are in issue, while the other stakeholders are concerned with the threat to their privileges over Ambazonia upon resolution of the violent conflict unleashed on Ambazonians. Rights, not only to lawyers, but to the ordinary person, are enforceable quantities. Privileges are mere advantages. So they take the lower rung in the hierarchy of what is at stake in this conflict. As I said, we do not need to debate this particular issue deeper, but I will take questions on them whenever and wherever they arise. My next point is, who should own the referendum process and thus assure the security of its integrity? The security of integrity of the referendum process depends on the stakes that the interested parties hold in or over Ambazonia. Those whose rights and freedoms guaranteed by the principle and act of trust, and immediately you think of the trusteeship agreement, are obviously the ones entitled unquestionably to the greatest quantum and quality of ownership, which are based on legality and legitimacy. I could also have said based in legality and equity. Because the beneficiary of the trust in the trusteeship agreement was not La République du Cameroun, it was not Nigeria, it was the erstwhile British Southern Cameroonians, now known as Ambazonians. When a trust comes to an end, the beneficiary grows from the equitable position of mere beneficiary into a legal entitlement in his own rights that displaces the trustee, who did not have any beneficial interest, but a mere protective legal power. The stakeholders whose worries arise merely from threatened privileges are nevertheless important, because Ambazonia will never be an island. We share a physical boundary from God with the Republic of Cameroon. We cannot play the ostrich over this. They are entitled, all those stakeholders with privileges, right or wrong, but to the appropriate degree of their standing in the scheme of things. But what is beautiful is that their involvement harbors opportunities for discharging their obligations towards Ambazonia, especially in cleaning up the iniquities of the past and a stoppage of continuation of those iniquities, so that an enabling environment is created for the thriving of justice and peace and good neighborliness within the community of common humanity. This now moves us to who should be eligible to vote in the referendum. No, sorry. What status should be accorded to the outcome of the referendum? Because that's always a problem. Even in ordinary contracts, I've had to advise my client, there must be a balance so that you too, you can have power to enforce your rights. So what's the status? What status should be accorded to the outcome of the referendum and when? I say that La République du Cameroon will feature in the preparatory phase for the referendum project as a principal party to the conflict. And there we could hold them with the assistance of the international community to a memorandum of understanding with a projected mandatory commitment to respecting the outcome of the referendum. On our part, once we get united, I emphasize the word united, around the referendum consensus, we shall work with credible third-party facilitators who will get all primary stakeholders to give a chance to peace and justice by submitting to the referendum project in the form, content, and processes as espoused earlier.
You could live in your community and people didn't.
And in particular, commit to respecting the outcome. It is therefore the commitment. It is therefore by the commitment to respect the outcome of the referendum that the integrity of the outcome shall be assured and consecrated in a memorandum of understanding, eventually to be transformed into an agreement or a treaty. This is quite a long presentation, and I would like to cut it short here by just making some quick broad strokes on what are my conclusions on what has been said, and maybe one or two recommendations arising from those conclusions. First, with respect to conclusions, I would say the close of the referendum project will not be a definitive end to what we would have engaged in. There will not be a next phase in quotes, open and close, but a succeeding project of facing the challenges of internal healing amongst us Ambazonians and post-conflict reconstruction of Ambazonia, which we shall permit the unity around referendum to grow and guide us in rebuilding our society for ourselves and for prosperity. We do not want, and we are challenging ourselves to be different and to be shielded from the manipulations that are constantly being referred to in South Sudan and other places. The bigger lesson will be that once we Ambazonians work together and not in dispersed ranks, we can achieve sustainable results, which will give an account of our times and lives to posterity. But very broadly, let me just share 3 recommendations that come out of this, as I was speaking. We should plan. And this is what has been lacking in this revolution. We do not plan, we do not strategize. So I'm suggesting we should plan immediately to hold an Ambazonian leadership caucus, built from ground upwards, and secure commitment to the referendum option as the one thing that brings us into oneness of purpose. Secondly, we should very quickly develop a popular education plan for bringing our population to speed, especially from ground zero, in understanding the decoded version of the Ambazonian conflict and the importance of embracing the referendum pathway to peace and justice. Lastly, we shall need to set up various expert volunteer teams to play the advisory roles as we navigate this turn in our freedom history. I say this because I have traveled the entirety of West Africa, not by air, but by land. From my house in Gungap in Bali, right to Morovia. I have been to East Africa, to South Africa, even when they were emerging from their own conflict. Of course, in Europe, the people who were implicated in the peace process in South Africa, I met them at the very early stages. As a regular visitor to the United States, what most of us see as NGOs, which are actually the effective think tanks of the United States foreign policy, should be beacons of inspiration to us, because no West African country is able to boast in terms of per capita of the human resources and in quality for that matter, like we have. Let us not stay by the lake, which has no dangerous salt, and die of thirst. Thank you for your patience. I will plead that the Secretariat permit me just maybe 3 minutes to gulp down a cup of coffee because I had a late night, and then we can go to the phase of Q&A. Thank you very much. And I salute your efforts, International Town Hall.
Thank you very much for that very detailed and enlightening presentation, Barrister Harmony.
I have my copy here. We can go straight to the questions right away.
Okay, we have a hand up.
Yes.
Mr. Assom.
Anthony Assom.
Barrister, we're so happy to have you. That was a beautiful presentation. And so those of us who are buying the referendum idea, so I was in an argument with a friend when I told him that the referendum is a viable option. And he asked me, but who is going to put that on the table? You think that Republic will ever put the referendum option on the table? And I told him that nobody puts options on the table for us. We put the self-defense option on the table by ourselves. And that we just need to be united behind this idea. But so my question to you, Barrister, is it looks like you made allusion to the answer to this question, but I just wanted you to be a little bit clearer in terms of the referendum idea. When all of us come together for the referendum idea, what are the resources out there, third-party resources out there that you know that can help us leverage that idea in the international community so that they can begin to get some, we can begin to get some buy-in from the international community? That's my question.
Thank you very much for the that very important question. And let me greet you in okay, let's move on. One of the things you must have heard me say is that there is a decoded version of the Ambazonian conflict. I did not expound on it because of the time constraint. But let me say this. I also mentioned that there are myriads of stakeholders in the Ambazonian predicament. There is the African, let's start from home. There are interested parties within Ambazonia with little slants of approaches. There is La Republique's interest, which is contrary to the interests of Ambazonia. But I've often described not La Republique per se, but the La République du Cameroon's establishment as a mask of so many people, particularly foreign interests. The people who are interested in the value of our subsoil over and above the humanity that inhabits that territory. These people are also weary of the disruption in the enjoyment of their privileges that this war has caused. Diplomatically, they cannot come out and lash out on La République. You know why? Because they got their licenses to enter there and be doing business or exploiting the territory through the establishment of the Republic of Cameroon. If you want to have deeper light shone on this point, I will advise you to look at the EU, that is European Union, African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries agreement. I think the last one I remember is the Cotonou Agreement, which are all, I'm sorry to say this, instruments of neocolonialism. But let me not use that harsh word. Let me soften it a bit as questions of international political economy. There is also the United States foreign policy on energy security in the Gulf of Guinea. And you know the Gulf of Guinea, if you check the map on the internet, it stretches from Mauritania down to Angola. Energy is so critical. It is what is ruling the Ukrainian war. And with the violence that has characterized relationships in the Middle East, you remember Syria, Iraq, it's all about energy. The discomfort in those areas has caused a shift to the Garden of Eden. the epicenter of which is Ambazonia. If you look at the geological map, the oil trough between Nigeria and Gabon, the deepest part of it is in Ambazonia. And that is where the best quality of crude oil is found. Recently, the ultramodern refinery of Dangote, the richest in Nigeria or in Africa, was launched or is to be launched. Nigeria cannot supply enough crude oil there. So what is this thing about energy security? United States needs a peaceful Gulf of Guinea. So if we organize ourselves around referendum and say, hey, US government, we are ready for a referendum because we are confident. I said we will educate our people. We can tell them what the results would be. And all they need is, can we emerge from this conflict to peace so that international trade can happen securely? So we have a bargaining chip. The fact that we want peace and justice. The members of the international community, they want peace so they can do their business. But if we manage through referendum to exit this conflict and position ourselves to be able to discuss as a people, as an independent people, we will tell them, yes, you have the technology. We don't have the technology. But we can hardly come to the United States and start exploiting your own natural resources. This is our God-given entitlement. So why don't we negotiate? We are emerging out of war. We are engaging in post-conflict reconstruction. What are you putting on the table if we are going to do business with you and also guarantee peaceful coexistence in West Africa and Central Africa, because we are the bridge between these two regions. And we know that the conflict in Ambazonia is infectious. And if you stop it, the geopolitical COVID will not spread again. And the oil you are tapping from Doba region in Chad will move down safely. There will be peaceful coexistence. There will be mutual recognition and respect of each and every people within the African continent, as well as across the African continent to their friends, quote unquote, and partners in the Americas and in Europe and Asia.
Thank you, Ni. We see Jojo Ambazo, your hand is up. Jojo Ambazo, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I've tried to carry out a bit of a research on this referendum, how they work. I just want Barrister to give me just one example of a referendum where, say, it happens without negotiation, and how that particular example is similar to ours. Thank you.
I might not be very exact here, but I'm very glad that you are saying you've done some research. So my expectation would be for you to share the results of your research. But I can tell you the East Timor conflict is one of those conflicts that was navigated out of with the use of a referendum. And there are international organizations that have actually developed tools for resolving issues with casting the vote, whether popular or for elective, legislative, or executive office. And I can cite you one international idea. It's a Norwegian NGO, which, no, Swedish, either Swedish or Norwegian. I can't really recollect now. And that's a civil society organization. It's not a state organization.
Excuse me, Barrister. It seems as if I didn't phrase my question properly.
No, I got you.
I'm just asking an example of where a referendum has been conducted, one without the consent of, say, the government, in this case, the Republic of Cameroon, and two, without proper negotiation, where a referendum
Barrister,
was
can I come in for a second? Can I come in for a second? If you don't mind, just also to be expeditious. So let me tackle, Jojo, if you don't mind, I'll tackle your question just to help.
Herman, if you don't mind, because he cut me short. I wanted to say that most referenda are part of the constitutions of state entities, and I refer to that. But Ambazonia's situation is unique. It is unique because there was a separate identity before midnight 30th of September 1961.
Yes.
And there has never been any legal transformation of Southern Cameroon into an integral part of the Republic of Cameroon. And on the 16th of July, 2016, I filed a petition before the Constitutional Council of Cameroon to tell me whether or not an act of union exists between the two entities. That thing has been killed. It has never been put even on the roll because they have no answer to it. So we are in a very unique position. A lot of what you must have seen in your research deals with internal conflict as opposed to the gray area where Ambazonia is not recognized as a state, but the legal history of Ambazonia shows that it is not part of La République du Cameroun. It is a separate entity. And that is where the negotiation here you're talking about is not around begging La République du Cameroun. But
so, yes,
I will conclude. I'll give
hold on a second.
To make his own contribution on it. That is why this is a discussion.
Yes, I'm just trying to see who has two microphones so I can mute. I think I may have successfully muted.
No, it was me, Herman. My computer chose the very ill-opportune time to want to restart.
Okay. That's okay. So let me tackle, Jojo, if you don't mind, I'll chime in with a different perspective. Partly because, and this is not your question, but partly because in the past week or two, I have also seen some misinformation being circulated around. The referendum proposal, referendum is a process. And it doesn't foreclose negotiation. In fact, you have to negotiate to get to the referendum. The question is, what is the calling card for the negotiation process? So is there going to be negotiations before referendum? Yes, clearly. Will Cameroon have to be, let me use the word consent to the referendum? To some extent, yes. Now, there are various ways around this, not all of which can be discussed publicly. And I know sometimes some other people, not you, bring this to see what some of the reasoning, the strategies behind certain things, certain other options are. What we have to understand is the referendum right now serves as a calling card. We have a couple of choices. You could go to, I could go to Congress, to my congressperson, or I could go to State Department and say, please, tell Cameroon, help me get independence. And the State Department will say, why? Southern Cameroonians don't want independence. How do I know you want independence? And proof of record, I'll call Kawala and I'll call Abobala and they'll tell you they want to stay in Cameroon. By the way, that has happened. So no, we can't help you because you guys don't know what you want. There is a guaranteed failure if we attempt to negotiate the outcome. You understand how the process will get you your outcome and you negotiate the process. So if somebody, and you do this, you can pick any country. I can pick the State Department because we're in the US. You go to the State Department and say, listen, we can go through the history of the constitutionality that leaves a void. This is not a question, as Lima was pointing, between Bamilikis and La République. This is a question of unfinished independence, and the Southern Cameroonians need to declare their choice. By the way, it's also in conflict. Whether we agree with it or not, we can all agree that all wars end on the negotiating table. However, on that negotiating table, we have to be sure that Southern Cameroonians pick, not colonial masters, like myself. I'm a colonial master, right? If you've been in the diaspora. So you go to lobby, you say the ballot box. It is very difficult for somebody to argue against the ballot box in issues of self-determination. It is going to be difficult to say, yes, if Abobala wants one Cameroon, let Abobala bring his supporters to the ballot box and they vote for one Cameroon. If Kawala wants federation, let her bring her, put her petition for federation, bring the proposal for Cameroon government for federation, put it on the ballot box. Me, who wants separation, I bring my own proposal, I put it. But the choice there is that is what we lobby for, to use international countries' powers to force Cameroon on the negotiating table. Lots of nuances will be worked out on the negotiating table, not the least of which the outcome of the negotiating table could be that, you know what, this thing is too much, you guys just go. There could even be no referendum. The point is, this is the calling card that unifies the voice of Southern Cameroons to get, for starters, the international community to help pull La République to the negotiation table. It does not circumvent the negotiation process. And that is why when we talk about referendum, we try to minimize the parameters that are defined with the referendum, apart from stating that it is exclusive to Southern Cameroonians or those of former British Southern Cameroon descent. The rest is left open. Lawyers would work out some of the things to make sure that it is ironclad, but it is intentionally also left so you don't publicly tie the hands of your future negotiators. And the second part you did not ask, that has been pushed around a lot. Oh yes, Cameroon will not consent. The countries have had to change their constitutions, obviously. By the way, if you remember when we started talking about the Canada process and we were pointing out something that was distinctively wrong, I will not go into details because there's no point in tipping our hand on certain strategies. I will not tip, but I will point out what the issue is. When you are a non-state actor or an unrecognized state actor dealing with a state actor, there are certain mitigating measures you have to take immediately. But while we don't go into those, one of the greatest things state actors use is say, oh, well, we can't do this in negotiation, is, oh, we can't do this because it's not in our constitution. So it's not allowed. That has always been done. That has always been done. But if they're on the negotiating table, it can be changed. Now, we'll not go into ways in which that is not an issue, but we already anticipate that It was one of the first criticisms we started, not criticisms, we were pointing out to Canada, to those who had gone to Canada, this should be done because this is what takes away that argument at the tail end of any agreement. There are ways, believe me, there are ways. We don't have to discuss them publicly. By the way, nobody starts the discussion with something being on their constitution. Most countries don't like the whole concept of referendum. You have to force it onto them, right? Sudan and South Sudan. Sudan changed its constitution. Britain has had to play around with it. Canada has had to play around with it. So we're not unique in that sense, but there are mitigating measures and there are solutions, none of which is appropriate to discuss. But sometimes I think some people, not you, Jojo, you did not raise it, but I see it being raised sometimes either as a means of scaremongering or as a means to force some of our more learned colleagues who've studied this and have measures in place to tip their hand publicly so that the public knows what is being planned, and then they too can plan their own counter strategy. So we all just have to recognize that we have to take some broad strokes, understanding that details, the town hall, for example, is inappropriate to discuss certain details. Lehman.
Well, Herman, just one quick point.
Yes.
I would like you to forward the second paragraph of the 7th slide to Jojo, because it directly answers his question and reinforces the fact which you have elaborated, that the question has its purpose, which is outside the realm of the discussion we are on now.
So the second paragraph of the 7th slide.
Yes.
Okay, Jojo, I'm DMing it to you.
I think, Herman, you can just share the slides. I mean, they are public, right?
They're public.
I mean,
okay, yeah, so
they are
public.
Just share the slides
with
Jojo.
Yes.
I think when I mean, let Lehman do make a comment, and I would have a comment. Yep.
Yeah, Doug, good point. I'm going to put that slide back on the screen so everybody can see while Lehman makes his comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We can hear you, Lehman.
Oh, nice hearing from you guys again. Greetings, Edmond, Ato, and the great Barrister Bobga. My salute.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I left a comment for you and a question on the chat. I hope after that our moderators will be able to read it so that I don't do a repetition. So I'll just give my comments and then the question can be read to you later on. Does that work?
It does.
Okay, so my comment is really quick. So it falls in line with what Jojo was saying. So the first thing is that Ambazonians need to first of all sit down and classify this conflict. The conflict is so simple that we misclassify it. The conflict is very simple. The conflict is about the sovereignty of the Republic of Southern Cameroons or the Republic of Ambazonia. Should we exist as a sovereign entity separate from La République, or are we part of La République that we unified and should stay under La République as part of it? Why do I want to precise this? If I don't, we will have all this argument if La République should be part of it or not. If La République is going to organize it or not. If La République is going to agree to a referendum or not. Now, when we classify this conflict, understanding that it is a conflict about the Republic of Southern Cameroon first. If it was a sovereign country, and if it has the right to stay or to become back a sovereign country as it was in 1961, it takes away all the needs for all the arguments. And now it is easy for us to simply state as a matter of fact that the reason we are asking for a referendum is not because we doubt if we are a sovereign state. It's not because we are asking for La République to separate into two. No, we want to use the legal documents we have, like the 1961 Constitution, that clearly define us as a sovereign government joining another sovereign government in Article 56. We want to base on the argument of Article 2 that calls for a referendum if the deputies are incapacitated and cannot represent the people. We want to invoke Article 1 that defines the people as the people of East Cameroon, which was La République du Cameroun, and the people of West Cameroon, which was the Republic of Southern Cameroons. When we have those legal understanding of the conflict, now, when we present the request for a referendum, it comes now as an entitlement, an international responsibility towards our people. Because now we have jurisprudence to quote as Eritrea, Kosovo, Yugoslavia, Crimea, Scotland, and the Brexit and all the others. That now comes to life. My point was, we try to argue for La République by asking if La République is going to accept it or not. No, it is the law. La République is not above international law. They are not above international jurisprudence. So we have that checked. And then now the question of negotiations. I just want to make it very easy for everybody. The referendum is part of negotiation. There is nothing as negotiation stand alone, and then there's a referendum. No. For example, when we were called to Canada, that was already the beginning of a negotiation, or to Switzerland. Negotiation is a long process, which involves calling for a ceasefire and other agreements. So when people say we want a negotiation, it sounds very stupid because they are already in a negotiation. Negotiation is not a one-time thing. It's a long process that starts with the armed conflict. When you are fighting against the other country, you are negotiating just by arms. When you stop now fighting and you call for a ceasefire, you are negotiating. They call it a peace talk. So negotiation is not something Ambazonians should be proud to stand and say, we want a negotiation. It makes you look stupid. I always use it in terms of relationship with your wife. When you get married, it is a given that you're going to have sex with your wife. It is very frustrating for you to come and say, I want my conjugal duties respected when you are with your wife in the room. It makes you look like a fool. By signing that document with your wife, it means that your wife has consented in you guys having sexual relations. Same thing with us saying that we want a negotiation. It makes us look stupid. Once they call for ceasefire, it is already what they call negotiations. What you do is you bring your package to that ceasefire and you state your conditions for the ceasefire. So we should stop making ourselves look stupid by trying to sound smart. I just want to end here and then tell you that thank you very much, Barrister Bobga. You did a great job.
What's your question? Lehman, just ask your question so we don't have to read it.
Okay.
My question,
I think Otto.
Yes.
He has raised some issues which we need to respond to.
Okay.
Lehman, thank you for your energy. That's what we need. But I can tell you, of all the waterfalls, at least in Ambazonia, the Menchum Falls is one of the greatest. But until the waters are passed through a turbine, we will not have electricity produced. The point you are making, I want to encourage you, and if you have listened to me from 1986 to now, you will realize that as intellectually aggressive as I could be, I try as much as possible to engage first in recognition and respect of the order. Refrain from, describing comrades as fools and so on. I'm not saying this, that you are wrong, but I'm saying diplomatically it is inappropriate language for public speaking.
I apologize. I apologize.
Yes, because what we are trying to do here, let me tell you, when I brought lawyers together, I had a 5-year plan of action, and I shared it. Some took it and sold it to La Republique, and they used it in developing their counter plan. So we need to sacrifice our knowledge of the shortcomings of the other in order to build this unity, because that is what is going to garner respect for us as a people. The other thing is, I am a student of conflict transformation, and this is way back in 2006. I was in Eastern Mennonite University at Harrisonburg, Virginia, for a 5-week summer school. Negotiation is one of the processes in the wide spectrum of methods of conflict transformation. Even armed conflict is a method. And the softest of them is mediation at the tail end, where the parties to the conflict are facilitated to work out a solution to their own conflict. And because we have been overtaken by the University of Warsaw, and we don't have the opportunity, look at the way you people work hard in this country. 3 jobs in order to sustain yourself and sustain family at home. People don't have time to go to school. I should have been backing a PhD by this time, but I can tell you, I didn't have the time, I didn't have the money, and that is the predicament of most Amazonians. So let us excuse ourselves of the difficulties we face and be open to educate one another, so that by sharing knowledge and skills, by daybreak, we shall be stronger than people ever imagined. And thank you for your contribution. You have my number. You can contact me, or you can ask some author and get my email. I'd like to continue the discussion with you, especially with Jojo, who says he's been doing a lot of research. I have done research too. I would like for us to share information backstage. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me just go real quick and apologize for my wrong usage of words. My goal was not to call anybody foolish. I said our position looks foolish in the international community because we are asking for something which we are already doing. And I really apologize for my poor choice of words. And once more, thank you very much for your time. And we all look up to you as an authority in this field. So don't take my mishap or my mis.
For me, it is parenting. You are a fine gentleman. The other people will not apologize.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Bring you up fine.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, and I extend my apologies to
thank
everyone.
You, Papa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Anthony Asom. Oh, okay. No. You want Anthony's hand is up, but if you want to go quickly, then we can come to Anthony.
Yeah, I just wanted to say.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Edmond, do you want to say something before I ask?
Well, Mbuton, maybe you go first. I will just make my comment later.
Yeah.
No, I was saying that with all of this conversation here, I guess it can be really meaningful and productive if we go beyond these conversations and begin to think about how we can start, tackling some of these issues that we have raised here. And I'm wondering whether Barrister Bobga and some other people who are capable of making these legal arguments, I'm wondering whether there is any project out there that they are writing out these arguments and putting it in a very simple manner that people like us that are not legally minded, can begin to use it. Because you see, you have the legal minds, we don't. I can't go to a group of Amazonians and do that presentation so succinctly as you are capable of doing here. So our argument and our marketing, can become a lot more effective if this argument is put out in a manner that people like us that cannot make the legal argument can go out there and begin to get buy-in from our community. Because some of the people that are making this argument that referendum is not an option or they are against the referendum option. It is just because of lack of education. That is the first thing I wanted to say. Is there a project out there to write this thing so that as we go out trying to market this idea, both for our own people and even for our non-people, is there anything that we can work on that brings education closer to the people? The second thing is that, you know, my first question was asking if there are international actors out there that, you know, we can use. But then in those international actor category, I think one thing we can do is to look for soft targets in the international community. Do we have a list of people in the international community that we can sell our idea to? But particularly, can we start with some of the soft targets, you know, that we can begin to approach and we'll build momentum from there? Because I know that if the United States government buys in, the deal is done. But prior to getting there, I believe we can identify some soft targets out there, like maybe lobbyists and NGOs and whatever, that we can begin to approach them and sell our.
Uncle Tony.
Yes.
You know that's a question that cannot be answered. That cannot be answered in public. I mean, Ato, permit me. This is, I think I can take the privilege of a nephew to talk to my uncle, like just let him know. I mean, okay. That's not something that we would do publicly, right? I mean, that's something we would have to, is the communication that we'll have at the background.
Okay.
Each time
well, just answer his question, yes. The answer to your question is yes, but that
each time we're on this forum, I always assume that the forum is public, right? I mean, I hope you understand that, and then we can talk about it later on. Yep. Right. Yeah.
Yes, but yes, Comrade Anthony, we would. This is part or the first part of the series of education for our people. That point has come up severally, and yes, there is a concerted effort because our people have to be involved every step of the way. Nobody will come to sell them a pill. They don't know what it's made of, when it was made, who made it, without labels and anything. That era is over in our struggle. Our people must be part of everything we do.
Moderator,
moderator,
let me say this. Let me say this, moderator. The question was answered in one of the 3 recommendations that I made. I started off by apologizing that I have retreated from the public discourse of our problem because of the confusion that ensued after the abduction of some of our leaders. But if you were to put up the last slide, you'll see that under recommendation, I said, we should plan immediately to hold an Ambazonian leadership caucus built from ground upwards. That's preparing the ground. Then I went on to say there is an aspect of education. You have to educate with material, didactic material, which is what Brother Asong is asking. But the very last point is that we shall need to set up various expert volunteer teams to play the advisory roles as we navigate this turn in our freedom history. My brother, in 1968, when I was in class 4 in primary school, Victoria, the first upstairs building primary school. Yes, the Chinese benefited from all Land Rovers from the period of the year that was not far from our school. I just sent them Land Rovers, the Chinese. People now think that their prowess in technology is what are very different. No,
Brother Asong mentioned that, as you also mentioned, the expert panel, since it came up and you are here and you've done a great presentation, is it possible for us to task you also with the legal aspects, especially in consultation with like Professor Anyangwe, to maybe consult them and maybe take up the lead, you guys take up the lead in working on the legal aspect, both what could be public or not public for our referendum option. I think Brother also raised it, and I think it's a great point that we should not just let it slip by without, and there's no better person to task than, you right here.
That is a given, and it is always an honor for me to work with the people who contributed in developing my legal mind. And I tell you, when I left from Nigeria and went to study in Ngwaikele, Professor Anyangwe was one of my professors. Then he was still a young man, full of great energy. So we have kept the relationship for as long as we live. And of course, I'm one of those people who goes by the African tradition that the one who carries the bag of the elders to village meetings is already a graduate into elderhood, even before he becomes an elder.
All right.
I want to first of all thank Bobga for taking the time off his busy schedule to come and have this very important talk with us. From the very outset of this phase of the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle, Bobga was very, very instrumental. He provided most of the tips that and most of the strategic guidance that enabled this struggle to germinate from 2016 moving forward. And I have listened very intently to his presentation, and everybody in this hall would agree with me that following his presentation, it is clear that there has been a gap in our liberation struggle. One of the things that has happened in our struggle is that people have stepped aside for various reasons. It is understandable that that many people don't like the atmosphere, the toxicity that is prevalent within our liberation struggle. And I believe that Bobga is one of those. And as such, their stepping aside has deprived us much of the clairvoyance, of the rationality, the logical thinking, and the straightforwardness that should animate a of our caliber. I think that by taking this posture today, he has clearly indicated that he is more available to provide much of the technical assistance that this liberation struggle needs. Because when you look at what we have suffered, he made a point which and I don't know, the point sank, but this is a point that we have been struggling to make. Some of us are refugees. Some of us are refugees. And we actually belong to ground zero and not. And so many people who are refugees here are like fish out of water. And the best way we can resolve our conflict is by using what, and I want to quote from some of his opening remarks, employ our community effort. Our community effort. We have tried as much as possible to hammer this home, but it seems as if even that we are deaf to it. As we say it, we don't hear what we are saying, and as such, we seem to be saying something else and doing the contrary. And today he has reiterated it. My appeal, therefore, to our people of Southern Cameroons is that following the presentation that has been given to us this day, Bobga has put on our table a mound of strategy treasury of peace that can help us to move this liberation struggle to the next level. There is a treasury that can take this liberation struggle to the next level. This town hall, no doubt, presents the crucible within which much of what will happen in our liberation struggle can be discussed, fermented, processed, and released. So, moving forward, Bobga, please, it is an appeal, and I believe that everybody in this hall is with me with what I'm going to say, that please take your seat, take your rightful seat in this liberation struggle, because the frustration is general, but the knowledge is not general. And so if you don't bring your knowledge, the frustration will continue to spread, and God alone knows, at the end of the day, our people would have died in vain. So our appeal today is that you would take your rightful place in this liberation, as you did from the very beginning. You were a counselor, you were an advisor, you at midnight, you stood in delicate places and to redirect and help give answers where the fighters needed, where the fighters had questions. This day is a remarkable day in our town hall, and the document that you have submitted, I believe that Mr. Atto, Edmond, Herman, please, this document needs to be exploited together with some of the other experts that have, Mr. Temken, Dennis, and Lehman, and others. Please put together a team so that we can move forward to the next level, because I believe that we already have sufficient material that can help to redefine the destiny of our people. I yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fontaine. I don't know if Bobga is there, if he was going to say something. You're muted.
Otto, I am here.
Okay.
But I have no comment.
Okay.
Other than that, Bobga is what he was yesterday. He is what he is today and what he will be tomorrow. My encouragement is that all structures for power and position must be dismantled. We must adopt the approach that nobody is on a high horse, whether visible or invisible. And we must choose what we stand for and agree on it and stand for it until we go to our grave. I told you people, 28th of next month, that's 28th of June, marks my 65th year on earth. I am praying God that without being a leader, even in my family, because I've already ceded the power of leadership, the position of leadership in my own very family to my daughter. I would like to continue to contribute humbly in imitation of Christ, not as a leader, but as a servant. I know Dr. Fontaine talks with a good heart that I should take my position. I don't take. That idea of taking is what has killed this revolution. Let the calling come from God, that whom shall I send? And the answer will be, here am I. Not to become king, but to be a servant and serve my people so that I have an account to give my God and Maker when I return home. And I encourage each and every one of us to adopt this philosophy, because what has ruined us is the thirst for power that opened us up to manipulation by the enemy. And Arthur, as you publish my presentation, make sure you first send it to people of La République du Cameroun. If you have any of their agents, let them read it and know that we are not dead in our brains. And with God being on our side, it will not be long. Our refugees that Honorable Eto'o was talking about is going to be the people of La République du Cameroun taking refuge in Southern Cameroon. And as people who are being taken care of now in other countries, we shall take care of them. But we shall teach them in a way that when they go back to their country, they will make their country as good as ours. I thank you, Dr. Fontaine. One assignment I give you is, you are university done, spend more time in reflecting on the proper curriculum for our educational system from primary to tertiary, which will reflect a cultural and other elements of independence in a sustainable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobga. Thank you very much. If the Secretariat is there, for the time Bobga still has with us, if we can come back to the slides and the questions, if people have questions or comments. This referendum issue is a big deal. And I think every opportunity we get, if we have other members in the House who want to speak, I don't know if Mr. Atemkeng is still in. He spoke last time. I see Pa Songwe is in. I'm just calling the names I can see here. Pa Chumonko is also in. If any of them want to add their voices to what Barrister Bobga Harmony has given us today as far as this referendum is concerned. I don't see Mr. Atemkeng. We may have lost him. He's all the way in Addis. He could be very late there. Yes,
no,
your hand is up.
Attend a different meeting, Arthur.
Okay.
Yes, this was a separate meeting immediately after starting at around 2 that he had to attend.
Okay. Pa Songwe, if you could unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chairman. I salute everybody in the House there. No protocol because we are all brothers. All that thing is the Republic thing. So I greet every brother, every comrade who is in here, and our Pa Pandangam who is there. Yeah, in fact, I actually don't have anything much to say. I just want to appreciate my brother, Barrister Bobga Harmony, with whom we share a lot, his history, the past, when we were all in Bamenda, and then whom I actually doff my heart to for his courage in really battling this thing right up to today, right from Cameroon up to today. I remember that particular image in where he hit his hand on the table like a man And I cannot forget it. I appreciate him for that. And in fact, even in the private, I've been talking with him and really worried why he's so drawn back. I was really feeling so bad. So I just want to use the opportunity to really thank him for honoring the invitation and then indicating that he's back on the battle with us. I had even mooted in private that we must do everything to get him on board. I'm just happy that he's already here. He has really presented the issue very well. I really enjoyed it. And I hope that we're going to work and get back our country. I posted a PowerPoint on which I also made a little research on the East Timor issue, and I guess everyone is understanding it. I don't need to, we go again to elaborate. I know that everyone has read it, and I really certainly appreciate it. And even people back home who are able to read PowerPoint and understand are really giving me feedback that it is quite in order and that they're confident that if we go this route, we're going to get back our country. So we just wanted to suggest that we should also devise a way to actually be able to communicate to the grassroots, the people who are in the villages, who don't have access to this media, neither WhatsApp, neither TV, neither, I don't know how we'll do it, but we really need to work hard to be able to educate them on this project. And then hopefully we're going to make it. So I wish everyone a happy weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Yeah, Tato, maybe I think one of the things, Bobga, this would come to the task of communication, right? I mean, about what you presented. I got somebody sent me a text and said it was very. Hello.
Yes, we hear you, Edmund.
Yeah, can you, Bobga? Are you hearing me? I wanted to get his attention about this. Bobga, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I don't know why my volume.
Yes, I think one of the comments that I got, privately on my text was that somebody watching was that it was really high, was very intellectually presented, and I guess that they didn't quite grasp some of the things that you were saying. And I wanted to actually appeal, probably maybe at some point, maybe, yes, there are concepts that you cannot really like break down beyond a certain level for some, but I think it would behoove us to really try back and see how we can simplify some of these concepts and also even make part of it in pidgin, so because our people, especially on ground zero, to our people on ground zero, because like we're saying, the mass education that's required for this is extremely, extremely important. And I don't want these ideas to just be, ideas that just kind of remain with us. And the question Jojo had asked, you could say, I saw that question answered in your presentation, but I'm not really sure already why, maybe not grasping it. Maybe, I don't know whether it was the way it was formatted in your answer, or maybe addressed in your question. So probably, maybe, I don't know what you may want to think about, maybe bringing down this to the level of the common person, but without losing the message.
Well, you can be rest assured that I took cognizance of the fact that the majority of the attendees of this town hall at the time that it is taking place will be us in the diaspora here. And this is one of the positive damage on my intellect from Sase College, because I couldn't afford to speak English otherwise, especially as a second generation Soban and somebody who was in Kasbambili when Leonard Mandangam, as we used to call him, spoke in Xhosa's language. And yes, absolutely. When I talked of educating the public. I didn't have enough time to elaborate on the Chinese approach. Mao Zedong did publish little pamphlets in English and Chinese in very simplistic way, where he educated the masses on exactly what was his political philosophy. And that laid the foundation for modern day China. I can give you a tip in response to Pa Songwe's point. The money that we spend on many other things I don't want to mention, if you take only $50 and you sponsor a meeting of a dance group and ask them and help them, work with them to translate some of the things about the referendum into a song in their dance group. You ask our musicians to take them. I am telling you what sitting in class and learning will produce. Within a month, you will have an incredible understanding of what we are talking about. And we cannot even start getting into referendum without educating that grassroots. So those are projects within projects. And when we work out the strategy and the strategy is being translated into projects, that will be done. Everything cannot be discussed in one day and in public. Even when you go to diagnose yourself for malaria, they take you into laboratory, draw your blood, check it, and they send the results for the doctor to interpret before prescribing the medication. That laboratory is not open to the public. Each patient gets in at his time and is treated in full respect of his privacy. And we are at war, whether violent or not. The secrets of our strategy are not for the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Fontaine, before we come to you, Pa Asungwe mentioned that Pan Dangam is also in the house. Dr. Fontaine, if I would let us give Pan Dangam the due respect, let's see if he wants to say a word. I probably didn't recognize his name. Pan Dangam, are you still there? Pa Asungwe, is Pan Dangam still there? If he is,
it looks like he has already left. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I saw him there in the morning. Oh, yeah.
Who is Pa Chumonko?
Pa Chumonko is part of Rocky.
Ah, Pat. Your name is changed by day by night. I don't see Pa. I give respect for all pardon. Go ahead.
Chumonko is Troki.
Oh, what do I know?
In other languages, it is Kwimanko.
Yeah, Kimanko, yeah, right.
Well, Patroki, I don't call you now. Go ahead.
No, Pa. No, I did. Life they treat me like the way we all man to go through now. I've been sick plenty. Sometimes I don't know. Yeah. Where am I? Now, please me so I get a very important call. I pick the call. I don't wait on the whole time. We'll get back later.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Fontaine, go ahead. Yes. Your hand was up.
Yes. I wanted to speak to the communicational aspect of the message that Bobga delivered. And
can you turn on your camera?
Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes, I wanted to speak to the communicational aspect of the message that Bobga delivered today. And I think at the town hall hour, we could do a special town hall hour. I think the town hall hour has usually been very, very useful in communicating certain tips to our people. And I'm sure that if the Secretariat could break down muscles of the message and extract the juice and do sessional presentations on in Pidgin to our population, it will go a long way to illuminate our people on what exactly the issues discussed today are. I believe that usually, well, what happens is that a message of this nature would require about 2 or 3 sessions, so that we just in little portions that we can even disseminate in 5 to 7 minute videos, in Pidgin, and and let people know what this is what
it looks like they're happy with what they heard.
Yeah, this is what Barrister Bobga said, and then let the people know what he stands for, who he is, and at the end of the day, some people will store the message, others will share it, and the message will go around. So I think it's one of the points that we can consider disseminating the information. I yield.
Thank you, Dr. Fontaine. That's something we would add to our strategy, but thank you for that. To have the last word on today, it's 3 p.m. We've had you for 3 hours today. We thank you. Nibobga, are you there?
And I was going to indicate that I think it's time for me to leave, because I went to bed at 5, got up at 7:30, and you could see in the most uncivilized manner, I was even taking breakfast while talking.
Yeah. So
I think we should be able to adjourn at this time.
Can you turn on your camera, please?
Okay.
No, I thought his camera.
I'm saying that more not pound the fufu, make it turn dust. Because fufu be meant to be swallowed. So
yeah, we don't see you.
Me, that your pineapple that phone, eh?
Okay. Anyway, just go ahead with the last word, Ni, before you leave us.
No, the last word is that I expect, real seriousness. We get to take on with armor of humility. Go out there to convince as many people as possible. So we rally around this referendum issue, even if the benefit not only for bring us to think together and act together. But one thing they were going to be very intolerant with. Mega talk I'm from Makara. I have a knack for identifying people who are susceptible to feeling that they can serve people who are politically polygamous, serving La Republique or Nigeria and serving Ambazonia. That one cannot work. Even as we discuss some of our issues, it is evident that some issues, as we are echoing but not taking it seriously as I would love to see it, are not things to be discussed in public. Palace we no getting Gumba house. It be less than quarter-headed compound.
Yes.
Let's be serious. Yes. We know those of us who are acceptable to some of our brothers and sisters who are in the gray area of, should we, for the short time, we still have to leave, support La République, and at the same time, maintain our thoughts about Southern Cameroon, but hoping that it can be stayed for a while? No. We need to be very, very purposeful. There is need for a new strategy, a completely new strategy.
Yes, and that strategy cannot be discussed.
And I'm reluctant to find myself where we would do real good work, like
Market Square.
some, not necessarily all, of what was done at APNC. And it was not the outsiders who did not attend APNC, but people who were in the heart of it that frustrated it because of greed and personal interest. Hopefully we have learned our lessons and we are going to be able to make a difference with this call for rally around referendum. Let me close this by sharing my experience of how the people of Akwa Ibom State. Otto, you and Dr. Fontaine, you all went to Calabar University like myself. That Akwa Ibom State campaign started in Calabar University campus. And what they said was they went into their folklore and there was something they used to call Akwa Isop Amai Song Ebibio. That is the Palava Boma tree, where all disputes, all conflicts was discussed under that Boma tree. So this time around, with all the insults that the Efik people were throwing on Ibibio people, that they are primitive, they are this and that, they're now summoned by transforming that folklore into an institution, calling all Ibibio children to rally around the Boma tree. And with all secrecy, they discussed their predicament in Cross River State. And from there, they called their elites and everybody acted as one person. Their state was given to them. My classmate who was part of that movement on campus, when we left law school, it did not take time. He became the Attorney General of Akwa Ibom State. So our country is very resourceful. We should stop talking about how much resources we have. We should stop being arrogant the way we talk to our covert enemies, the international interests. We should put on our armor of diplomacy and woo these people without compromising our objectives. And I assure you, with the impending implosion in the situation in La République du Cameroon, it is going to be very easy. In fact, we don't have time on our side. We should be ready like yesterday within the next 3 months. That if they throw it on us, this is your independence. What are we going to do here? Are we going to be South Sudan?
That is, we know.
We have work. So town hall, get ready to even set up a committee for pragmatic research to support the revolution. I know there are groups of people who are, my name is even in their group, call themselves scholars. I've not seen any of the articles they are publishing, but essentially, those articles may reflect on our problems, but they are responsive to individuals' promotion in the academia. I don't hate it. I love it. But now, we need to rescue our country because I give you 15 years only as the maximum. We are going to be able to be the West African, Singapore, and Malaysia. I hear the dollar is being dropped here and there. We shall do trade by barter. If you mine our oil, we calculate the value of the oil, and you are going to do us a railway with our own engineers supervising from Victoria to Messager. You will do the roads. We are not interested in big universities. Even Dr. Fontaine will teach English, but in primary school, so that he starts developing the reader
Exactly.
and Bafut.
Exactly.
We are going to have schools for technical education. That's why I said you people should start reflecting on educational policy. I already have a preliminary write-up where we can exploit artificial intelligence, computer science, to raise the objectivity of administration of justice and cut down costs. So we have work. You don't need to stop your regular work that puts bread and butter on the table. What you need to do is to dedicate as much as you can without killing yourself, some hours or minutes per month for the struggle. That is the fuel we have now. Let's put it in the tank and crank the engine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ni. Thank you very much. I don't know if the Secretariat is there, but on behalf of the Secretariat, we thank you. Your people love you and count on you. And we look forward to being in touch with you behind the scenes, Ni. Thank you for coming and educating and edifying your people. Prof. Herman, I see you're on.
Yes, no, Secretariat is on. I think I'll just ditto what you said once more. Thank you for joining us at the town hall. I know you've left with your hands full of assignments, but it's with good work. It's for good work. Thank you.
Okay, Papa. Thank you. Now let me leave.
Okay.